covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
We made it past the pilot episode. Can you believe it? In all seriousness, I'm humbled by the overwhelming support and feedback for the debut episode last week of The Signature Spot. Hundreds of views, hundreds of downloads. We're going to start creeping into the thousands. We're basically there at this point. So again, thank you for joining me on this new podcast journey. The best is yet to come, and I am super excited. A new episode every single Thursday. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, youtube.com/The Signature Spot. The show also appears on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, Spreaker, podcast apps such as Overcast, and also iHeartRadio. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm easy to find at The Signature Spot on Facebook. Give it a like if you haven't already. At Chris Toplack on Twitter. At Chris Toplack on Instagram, which has nothing to do with wrestling, but you can have a glimpse into my life there. And I used to give a shout out to Google Plus, but it is basically no more after a massive data breach. Now, what's funny about that, and of course, data breaches are not funny, is the fact that Google Plus, I actually had a really dedicated fan base on there. I had hundreds of followers. They would ask me questions on a bi-weekly basis, and now it is essentially no more. So hopefully all of those followers find their way to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram accounts, so on and so forth, and they subscribe on all the different platforms this show is available on. We have a lot to get to today. My thoughts on Super Showdown and how Raw more than made up for it. UFC 229, if you missed that, I'll give you a bit of a rundown there. New Japan Pro Wrestling, King of Pro-Wrestling, and also discussing the greatest superstars and moments in Smackdown history with my good friend Chris Morrison.
Your weekly recap.
It was a very eventful week. And let's start off with UFC 229. I'm not going to run down the entire card, but mostly just the conclusion. You want to know why? Because this felt very pro wrestling-esque, even though I'll give you my take on it. So Khabib forced Conor McGregor to tap out in a very lopsided performance. He remains the lightweight champion, not without controversy. Khabib hopped over the cage. He attacked Conor's coach, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach. I believe it's Dylan Dennis. One of Khabib's teammates entered the cage, sucker punched Conor, and even before that, Conor took a few swings as well too. Chaos ensued. So let's pull back and look at everything. Conor's bus incident in April, unacceptable. Much of Conor's psychological warfare before this fight, way too personal. Khabib's post-fight antics, unacceptable. And of course, his teammates' antics, also unacceptable. Really, everyone is to blame, including the UFC, for allowing this to occur. Now, one may think, how did they allow this to occur? Well, of course, with the bus incident, all that psychological warfare, and of course, they could have had even more security in place to ensure something like this did not happen post-fight. Now, Khabib is undoubtedly the best lightweight on the planet, and his victory will be completely overlooked, which is a shame because he's incredible. And perhaps it's just me, but the UFC has become such a circus for the past couple of years, and that's why I have fallen away from it. Loyal to pro wrestling, though. And you know what? The sport could use more Georges St. Pierre's. It's not because he's a fellow Canadian. He's a remarkable fighter, an even better human being, and he would never embarrass the sport by saying or doing something inappropriate or failing drug tests, Mr. John Jones. He's always handled himself with the utmost professionalism. Rich Franklin's a great example as well. So, wow, that was very eventful and embarrassing when you think about it. Now, WWE Super Showdown, which took place that morning. No, I did not stay up for it. Thumbs up, thumbs in the middle, thumbs down. How about let's start with thumbs up. AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe. Match of the night by a long shot. Those two held nothing back and they stole the show. Not to be outdone, Buddy Murphy won the Cruiserweight Championship in his hometown. It was a great match with Cedric Alexander, and Buddy's dreams of becoming the Cruiserweight Champion came to fruition, and he received an excellent response too, which would have been great. Also, thumbs up. The live atmosphere at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, it was electric, and the crowd really added to the overall quality of the show. How about Elias and Kevin Owens? They are undoubtedly the most entertaining duo in the entire WWE, and the Iconics emerged victoriously. The match was fairly underwhelming. I didn't have a huge problem with it, but I enjoyed the outcome along with the reaction it produced. Thumbs in the middle. There's a lot here. The New Day retaining. It was a solid opener, don't get me wrong, but I was really hoping for a title change as their act grows staler on a weekly basis. Yes, they constantly redeem themselves, but come on, give it to the bar. Becky Lynch versus Charlotte. The entire match was just so oddly booked, pushing Charlotte, or actually rather pushing Becky as a coward who constantly wants to retreat just simply doesn't fit the narrative. She's better when she's that stone cold Becky Lynch character. How about the Shield versus the Dogs of War? It was disorganized and clunky. Dean Ambrose finally turning heel while feuding with both Shield members desperately needs to occur. The Undertaker versus Triple H. While I appreciated the effort involved, this match was difficult to watch. The Undertaker is a shell of his former self. Triple H even visibly slowing down too. Yes, there was plenty of star power associated with this match with Kane and Shawn Michaels, but it's time for them to step away from anything in-ring related. Thumbs down. No real surprises, no newsworthy moments. The matches were satisfactory, but produced few real gems. The length of Daniel Bryan versus The Miz. Somebody probably had an injury or something was going on. Given the rivalry in history between these two, I was anticipating yet another great match, but instead it lasted just over 2 minutes. John Cena's appearance felt wasted. Bobby Lashley gained nothing in this match, and the sixth move of doom was incredibly underwhelming. Essentially, it's just like a big punch. Ronda's double armbar finish was creative, but it also came across as downright silly and unbelievable. Overall, WWE Super Showdown felt more like a house show in a stadium with about 70,000 people in attendance. The main hurdle with these B-level pay-per-views is that nothing shocking or substantial will really occur. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. New Japan Pro Wrestling. King of Pro-Wrestling 2018. Standout moments to me, Chris Jericho disguised as one of Evil's druids ended up attacking him at ringside. The final nail in the coffin, so to speak, was a code breaker in the middle of the ring, followed by laying out Evil. With the belt, those two will go one-on-one for that championship within the near future. Kushida versus Marty Scurll. Kushida won via pinfall to become the new IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. It was an excellent match, told a very compelling story filled with technical wrestling and creative counters. Tanahashi versus Switchblade. Incredible performance from both men that saw Tanahashi get his arm raised after a cradle pin out of nowhere and for the IWGP World title. It was the champion, Kenny Omega versus Kota Ibushi and Cody. It was match of the night to me. Omega won with a one-winged angel on Ibushi, while Cody was unable to break up the pin. This finish also protects Cody as well. So that was a solid event. I didn't get to watch all of it from start to finish, but thoroughly enjoyed it. Speaking of enjoyable, how about Raw? That was easily a top contender for the best episode of Raw in 2018. Nearly every segment and match was highly entertaining, and there was very little to dislike. The WWE completely redeemed themselves, at least in my eyes, after the disappointing Super Showdown event. Some of the standout moments to me, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose versus Strowman, McIntyre, and Dolph Ziggler, easily twice as good as their match from Super Showdown. And then following the Shield's loss, frustrated Dean Ambrose stormed off. Again, the seeds of deceit continue to be planted. The Bella Twins should never be booked as babyfaces. Not now, not ever. So that's why their inevitable heel turn on Ronda Rousey not only made sense, but it actually came off very well too. And perhaps the highlight of the night was Kurt Angle winning the Global Battle Royal as Conquistador. How amazing was that? Especially the little barrel roll, too. It even had Corey Graves laughing. I believe he was off script with that one. It was a tremendous surprise with a worthy crowd response. Did Bobby Lashley and Kevin Owens accomplish the mythical double turn? If so, Lashley was a great, arrogant heel in Impact Wrestling, so I'm anxious to see how this plays out, especially now with Lio Rush. Not to be outdone, SmackDown was incredible this week. You had Becky Lynch versus Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Championship, arguably the best feud in the WWE at the moment. Charlotte spearing Becky into the SmackDown set, reminiscent of Rhino goring Chris Jericho into the set nearly 20 years ago. Time flies. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan on Miz TV. The Miz, of course, he had his part there too. I like the fact it's a logical build towards this feud and this story here. Daniel Bryan basically stating, I came back from retirement to be the WWE champion, and you stand in the way of my goal. And AJ, hey, Daniel, hate to crush your dreams, kid, but I'm not giving this up so easily. And then AJ Styles versus Shelton Benjamin in a non-title match was a solid effort from both of them. It's great to see Shelton Benjamin on television on a weekly basis. He belongs there. He's in his early 40s, and it feels like he's in his early 30s. And then Jeff Hardy versus Samoa Joe in a World Cup qualifier match. Wasn't crazy about the finish, but it was still a very reputable match. Death, taxes, and stellar episodes of NXT television. All of those things are guaranteed. If you're going to watch just one match, Ricochet versus Adam Cole versus Pete Dunne for the NXT North American Championship, it was wild. Ricochet retained, the one and only.
The latest industry news and rumors.
WWE officially announced the return of Rey Mysterio Jr. for SmackDown 1000. This marks Mysterio's first appearance on SmackDown in over 4 years. Furthermore, he will be squaring off against Shinsuke Nakamura in a non-title WWE World Cup qualifier. Also appearing on SmackDown 1000, you have Edge returning to host The Cutting Edge. The Undertaker and Kane, the Brothers of Destruction, make their way back to SmackDown. Evolution reunites. That's Triple H, Randy Orton, Batista, and Ric Flair, the two-time Hall of Famer. Plus, Michelle McCool, Tori Wilson, Vicky Guerrero, and Teddy Long. Perhaps he'll make a tag team match. Sunny is out of prison. Tammy Sunny Stitch. She issued her first public statement, or made her first public comments, rather, since being released from jail. So she was incarcerated for about 7 months after being arrested for failing to appear in court for 2 DUIs. Don't drink and drive. Few injury updates. Kevin Owens out. According to the Wrestling Observer, Kevin Owens is expected to be out of action for 4 to 8 months with his upcoming knee surgery. And Sasha is still out. According to Ryan Satin of the Pro Wrestling Sheet, heard from a source that Sasha Banks is dealing with a back injury, but I'm not sure how serious it is. Have had trouble getting more info or additional confirmation from sources. Up next, I am joined by Chris Morrison, play-by-play announcer for Super Kicked Pro Wrestling, which is a promotion based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. You may also recognize him from his appearances on Aftermath, which typically airs either before or after WWE shows on Sportsnet 360. You can follow him on Twitter at 20mintimelimit.
And now, our featured guest.
Mr. Chris Morrison, it's been too long, my friend, joining me on the signature spot with Chris Toplack. Thank you.
Yes, 2 Chris's.
Yeah.
2 Chris's in the same, well, we're not in the same room. But
No. We'll change that at some point.
Yeah, when was the last time we saw each other? I bet you the last time I think we saw each other now was NXT TakeOver Toronto.
That's correct. Kyle was there too.
Yes, your buddy Kyle, and we were sitting in the lobby of the Westin Bayshore, I want to say.
Yes, it was Weston Castle, I think. Yeah,
the Harborfront. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and we were. Let's see, who made it through the lobby that day?
Shane McMahon, Kevin Owens, Pat Patterson was sitting there, I believe. Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, I think I mentioned. There was a ton. Randy Orton, who did not look too hot to trot at that point. He was pretty pissed.
Seth was there, Seth Rollins, JoJo. I think Kathy Kelly was even there.
Yes.
The Brian Kendrick. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Brian Kendrick, funny story. He was sitting right there with Tony Nese. Fans went over to take a photo. He had to hide his Guinness. I don't think he can take photos with alcohol.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And I think even Roman Reigns, if we didn't mention Roman Reigns was down there too at one point.
He was. And then also, furthermore, when Kyle and I arrived there were people that were telling me that AJ Styles and I think Bailey were there. And I was thinking, wow, same hotel. That's pretty amazing. Sasha Banks as well.
Sasha Banks, yes. And funny enough, with Roman Reigns, he wasn't booed out of the hotel.
No, he wasn't.
There's no booing.
No, he was okay. He ate his dinner in peace, and he was fine.
Yeah.
So Smackdown 1000 is taking place this coming Tuesday, and I found it very fitting that we could actually chat about it. But first, I wanted to run down some Smackdown facts. So the pilot aired as a one-off special on April the 29th, 1999. The show was named after The Rock's catchphrase, "Layeth the Smackdown." Michael Cole, and not a lot of people know this, Jim Cornette were SmackDown's first commentary team. In the longest match in SmackDown history, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, they wrestled for an hour, the Iron Man match back in 2003, which, by the way, Lesnar won. But man, time flies.
It sure does, yeah. I mean, just hearing you say 1999 to think back, and I do a deep dive on the network quite regularly, and the amount of stuff that I forget looking back, it's insurmountable sometimes. Like, it's crazy how much I think I know or think I remember about WWE, and then to go back in like 1999, I mean, just it was an amazing time to be a fan of professional wrestling, and even talking to family and friends now, and they ask me about WWE and why I get into it and what's so special about it. And I always tell them, it's the history is so deep, and just everything that happened during that time and the time before that with Hogan and Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior was just some of the greatest points in entertainment, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And it's hard to believe. I can speak for myself. I was not even 13 years old during that pilot episode back in 1999. That blows my mind too. Yeah. I was still drinking my first beer. I was, you know what I mean? Like, it was like I was 19 years old, and just, to be coming through, like, to be growing up in that era, and what we were watching and what we were witnessing, it was just, to go back and see that is just crazy. Absolutely. It's historic, and obviously it laid the foundation of what was to come. Now, the WWE, I wanted to get your take on this. They released their 5 greatest SmackDown superstars of all time list. I think this is your first time hearing about it, too. It is, yeah. So I want to run down the top 5. Maybe you can provide me with your top 5, but I have mine. I created my own list here. So number 5, Eddie Guerrero. Number 4, Edge. 3, surprisingly, AJ Styles already. 2, The Undertaker. And number 1, The Rock. Okay. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I don't think I could argue that top 5, to be honest with you. Like you said with AJ Styles already. Yeah, he's in the top 5. That's a big leap. But that's a huge leap, and he's one of those guys that I didn't know much about until talking with you, and you were saying to me, like, this guy is, he's the guy. He's the guy. You will want to watch this guy. He is special. And ever since he's come into WWE, he has lived up to that billing. And even this latest rivalry feud with Samoa Joe, has just unbelievable. Yeah, and it kind of brings you back to the classic rivalries, the Savages and the Steamboats, these ones that got personal. What was it, Brian Pillman and Stone Cold, right? When Stone Cold broke into Pillman's house. And I mean, that's I think that happened on Raw, right? It did. And obviously, you know how much that resonates with me, being one of the biggest Brian Pillman fans known to man. And this was even before Brian Pillman Jr. was on the map. I love the guy. So yeah, when it gets deep-rooted and personal, those are the best feuds, because you get involved. And also, I like the fact that it can actually linger and stretch out, not just for months, but possibly years, because you can actually remove them from each other, but they're still kind of in that same environment. Like Brett and Shawn is a great example. They could have feuded off and on for like the next 10 years. It still would have been fresh. Oh, definitely. And those guys are so talented. They're next level talent that even, what was it, 20 years later?
before they like reconciled in the ring on Raw or something. Like, or we're talking a lot about Raw. We should be talking about SmackDown, but to be able for that to have carried on and for people to have cared about it for that amount of time is just insane. So yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe this isn't the level of Brett and Sean, but there is a potential to really grow this and bring these guys back together at a later date. I feel like.
Absolutely. And I feel that Daniel Bryan and Samoa Joe could probably share that same dynamic too, just based on the personalities and how one is just the extreme babyface and one is the extreme heel.
Yeah. And then, too, it was like we're talking WWE. They've also had their history, Samoa Joe and AJ Styles.
TNA.
If I'm not mistaken, TNA, right? So, yeah.
I can vividly tell you back in 2005, one of the greatest matches I've ever seen. It was unbreakable. It was AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Samoa Joe, the triple threat. I would put that up there with probably all the greatest matches I've seen over the past 15 years. That's how high I would put that up there. The chemistry, it was like I wouldn't put it up there with my all-time favorite being Austin and Brett. I'll save that for a later episode, which I just thought was storytelling 101. But it was just incredibly engaging, action-packed, and everybody came out looking like a superstar.
Could you imagine if, like you brought up Austin Brett, could you imagine if WWE now would go to those extents? And in terms, I guess I'm speaking mainly bringing back color in the matches and the attitude of Austin at that point. Like if they had that now with some of these guys, like I remember a couple of years ago, somebody asked me, they said, what do you think the Attitude Era could work now? And I'm not 100% sure it could with some of the superstars that we have. That being said, I don't really know all of their personalities, but there are a few where every once in a while I go, man, if this guy was allowed to just really say what he feels, and use the language yourself and myself and a lot of other people use, would be insane. It'd be awesome to watch.
Absolutely, and it's make or break. And I feel as though back in the Attitude Era, they were afforded some opportunities to go out there, lay it on the line. And what I love about it is that if you crash and burn, so be it. You can make it up next week or hopefully next month. But if you shine, similar to the Austin 316 promo, that is a career-defining moment potentially.
Yeah.
So I think
100%.
that needs to happen more often. So I wanted to give you quickly my top 5, see what you thought about this one. So my top 5, a man who is quite forgotten, who is appearing on SmackDown 1000, returning, is Rey Mysterio at number 5.
Okay, yeah.
I have The Undertaker at number 4, just due to the fact that, of course, he was very prominent on the show, but again, off and on due to the fact that he had more part-time appearances.
Right.
3, I had Eddie Guerrero, just because for about a 3-year stretch, he was just one of the main focal points of the show. I have Kurt Angle at number 2, because also he was a GM on there, if many recall. And he, during those early days where Paul Heyman was writing the show, Kurt Angle, again, a main focal point. And for me, number 1, Edge. I feel like nobody defines SmackDown more than Edge in my mind.
I 100% agree with you on that. And to me, Edge brought me back. There's always been periods in professional wrestling where you go through a high and then you go through a low, maybe as a fan, and I go through that every once in a while. Like right now, for instance, we were just talking off camera or off mic, I guess you could say. We were talking, and I said, right now I feel like it's a real low period in WWE. There's not really a lot that's captivating. Sure, you've got your Samoa Joes, your AJ Styles, Becky Lynch, Charlotte, that sort of stuff. But every once in a while, there's just sort of that lull where, at least for myself, I fall into. But Edge was one of those guys that brought me back to WWE, and he captivated me, and I wanted to watch him every week because I wanted to know what sort of zany, crazy, scheming thing he was going to do. And his rivalry with The Undertaker was unbelievable.
Yes, it was.
His matches with Batista, they were all great. And I would definitely the WWE list. We're going to go back to that for a second. Obviously, The Rock is probably arguably one of the top 5 greatest stars in professional wrestling.
I would argue top 3.
Right. Okay. So to be number 1 and they named the show after him. Okay. But yeah, I definitely if I was going to have a list, I would spoiler alert, Edge would be number 1 as well, to be honest with you.
Good for you. So
Yeah.
so do you have a top 5, or with that, is it kind of like Edge and then anybody else we could just fill them in there?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not going to, I don't think it would veer too far away from the names that we've already said.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Edge is number 1. Undertaker would be number 2, just based on the character and how much I loved him back in the when he debuted in 1990.
Of course, the sheer impact and the longevity.
Yeah, and I was like, just recently I was watching WrestleMania 7, his match with Jimmy Snuka with my dad, and just the fact that I can go back that far and watch him when he wasn't really even, he was more of like a Frankenstein. He didn't really have the moveset that he would later have.
That's true.
As he got older. So yeah, he would be number 2. Eddie Guerrero, just based on like that guy was just a machine when I watched him in the ring, even back in his days in WCW when they didn't care about him, him and Jericho and those guys. And then what else do we have there?
I had Mysterio personally, just because he was such a huge star on that show. One that gets overlooked too could be Batista. He was a big part of SmackDown.
Yeah, definitely. Even JBL. To an extent,
John Cena, he was laying the foundation of that post about 2003.
Yep. Like, wasn't that his confrontation with Kurt Angle?
It was.
Wasn't that was on SmackDown, right?
Ruthless aggression.
The ruthless aggression. That's right. I was always more of a Raw guy myself, but
I was SmackDown. I was always SmackDown. I always bled blue.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I did not know that about you. We're learning something about ourselves, each other today. But I mean, like I said, that just goes back to my Edge point. When he was on SmackDown, I was like, I need to watch this.
Yes.
Because this guy is next level. He's unbelievable. So yeah, my list wouldn't go too far. I mean, even if we're talking and people listening are sort of just new to WWE, I mean, I'd have to throw like the New Day in there. And then, there is a women's pay-per-view coming up called Evolution. I would even, like Becky Lynch. I'm talking her match with Charlotte in Melbourne, or was it in Melbourne, Australia?
It was
recently, the Super Showdown.
It was.
That was arguably the best video package match. Like, that was the best part of that whole show to me.
Yes, it was.
And even just before that, like Becky Lynch is just amazing. Like jumping Charlotte from out of the crowd, fantastic stuff.
They just need to book her, and I know that Jim Ross alluded to this, but they need to just further promote her and book her like Stone Cold Steve Austin, the whole DTA era where it's don't trust anybody, and she's not necessarily a heel or a baby face, but again in 2018 she's in that proverbial gray area, and I like that about her.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, she doesn't have to come out and start drinking beers, and I mean, hey, God bless her if she did that. If she came down on a 4-wheeler and started drinking beers,
eating quinoa
like this Tuesday. Oh, if she did that on Tuesday, oh man,
that'd be amazing.
Oh, it'd be fantastic.
So speaking about SmackDown, there have been many memorable moments over the past near 20 years. Do you have any that stand out to you as some of your favorites, especially going and digging into those moments on the WWE Network?
Oh, man. Well, one of the ones I might be a little clouded on this, but when Edge retired, he did his announcement on. Did he do it on both Raw and SmackDown, or was it just SmackDown?
He did it on Raw. It was the night after because it was a shocker. I remember that he came out and he just dropped the bombshell, and there was an audible in the crowd that was just really. Yeah. Nobody was prepared for it. I certainly wasn't either.
Yeah. So that one for me. I mean, I'm pretty sure he did. So he did do it on SmackDown though as well. I think, right?
He went over to he went over to SmackDown. He also had some appreciation nights over there too.
Right. Okay. I mean, that's one thing that stands out, and that was one of those things I couldn't quite remember if it happened on Raw or SmackDown. I'd have to say, like maybe some earlier stuff, like when Jericho got speared through the
gore.
The gore. That stands out a lot. Let me see what else happened.
How about this one? How about
we're testing my memory here?
How about I can throw a whole bunch out here, and this is literally off the top of my head. Steve Austin, Booker T in a supermarket.
There you go. Yes,
that's the one for me.
Yeah, check out. What was it? We got a check out on Aisle Jackass or something like that. Whatever that was.
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Anytime I'm in a supermarket, and I try to avoid them as much as humanly possible, I'll let my wife go through that. She doesn't mind it. I hate it for reasons I will not dive into on air. But
Right.
I'm always like, what if there's like two wrestlers just getting into it in, the produce section? I would totally sit back and take it in.
Well, it's too bad you weren't with me 2 weeks ago, because I almost got into it with a guy in the cereal section.
Ooh.
Just still parked up, set up shop right in the middle of the aisle. Like, hey, there are more than just one person in this world. I need to get my Frosted Flakes. Stat.
Wow. We were going to witness a stunner due to the blockage of the Frosted Flakes, which I would have happily commentated for this as well.
That'd been great.
How about, this is a more serious one, but
Okay.
the Smackdown after 9/11. It was a very dark time for America. They really needed that as that boost of entertainment, something uplifting, and really credit to Vince and the WWE. They said, we're going to push forward with this because I think this is what America needs right now. And I agree.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly at that time, like the NFL and even the NHL all sort of took a week before they came back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for WWE to just I believe it was right away, was it not?
It was.
Or did they?
It was almost right away. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like that next week because it happened on a Tuesday. 9/11 did.
Yeah. So I think it happened pretty darn quickly in that regard, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one. I mean, the one thing too that I always remember is Brock Lesnar F5ing the one-legged kid.
Zach
against
Gallen.
the ring, right? That was a SmackDown, right?
It was. That was when Brock Lesnar was also a very big part of SmackDown. I thought he was one of the unsung heroes of the show over the past 20 years personally.
Yeah, and so to do that in front of that kid's mom, I thought that was funny. I like that sort of thing. Like, I like it when it goes really over the edge and pushes the boundaries a little bit and kind of makes you feel a little uneasy about what you're watching. I don't mind that about WWE from time to time, So
I like it when it's a little edgy too.
Yeah, and then just the other thing too that, and this is more of a cosmetic, is I always remember the fist.
Yep, and they got rid of it.
And they got rid of it. Apparently, I was talking to Jimmy Corderas, a while back, and he was saying they still have that somewhere
in the archives, right?
In the archives, in storage. Like, that's still something that's somewhere on North American soil. Is that fist?
Imagine if they brought it out on Tuesday. How cool would that be?
Oh, it'd be great.
Yeah.
And if they maybe even auctioned it off or something, I don't know. I'd love to know. I'd love to know where that is, because I'd love to see it. Hopefully, it does come out on Tuesday.
Let's put our pennies together and we'll transport that to Super Kicked.
We'll
professional wrestling.
Yeah, we'll cut it in half. Super Kicked would love it. They'd drop it on somebody.
Oh, that'd be amazing. So I'm going to run down a couple of my favorite moments off the top of my head here. A recent one: AJ Styles defeating Jinder Mahal for the WWE World Championship. That was a huge moment on SmackDown.
Huge moment, and a guy that deserved it 100%.
How about Eddie Guerrero's WWE Championship celebration? That was after he defeated Brock Lesnar. That was, I believe, February of 2004. A huge moment for him. We had John Cena's debut against Kurt Angle, which was, again, his make-or-break moment, and he really stepped up to the plate. Edge cashing in on The Undertaker. That was, I believe it was May 2007. Again, I don't know how I have the memory for this, but that was Money in the Bank there. They cashed in his contract on The Undertaker. The Ultimate Opportunist did it again. That was amazing.
Wasn't that... I'm trying to think. Was that after he lost? Because I remember Undertaker beating him at WrestleMania in Miami, WrestleMania 24. Was that 24 the one where Flair retired?
Yep, it was 24. They headlined it.
Yeah, and they headlined it, and Edge lost it. And I seem to remember him getting it back right away.
That may have been it. I believe that may have been it. A couple others, including Brock Lesnar here. How about Brock Lesnar? Talk about a visual in the Big Show break the ring. Remember that?
Oh, that one.
Monster suplex.
Yeah, and that just recently happened again, not too long ago, right? And that was
Strowman. I think it was Strowman and Big Show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
it's something you don't see.
No.
And that's the crazy thing about it is and what's so great about that is it's so shocking because you don't see it
no.
ever. It's happened twice?
It has. And it was a spectacle both times.
Yeah.
Couple others that come to my mind. Mentioned it off the hop. Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle, the 60-minute Iron Man match for the WWE Championship. That was back in 2003. I thought, in my opinion, the greatest match in SmackDown history.
Greatest match because how long did SmackDown run for? 2 hours?
Yep.
So great in
half
that
of the
it took
show.
half of the show. It was one match, and that's a huge topic nowadays too. Is like the length of these shows, 2 and 3 hours. So, and to do that, I mean, is insane to go for a whole hour.
To captivate the audience for an entire hour on live television, or at the time it may have been taped, but I think it may have been live. So on live television, doing that is absolutely remarkable. Especially two at the very top of their game. What many seem to probably forget was that this was far after their WrestleMania 19 match that took place in about March or April of that year. This was like several months later. This was after Kurt had time to heal, and same with Brock.
Well, yeah, because Brock did the shooting star press that he missed.
Nearly
that one.
Nearly
that
took
was the one.
I was gonna say nearly took him from 6'3" to like 6 foot after that, due to his neck just basically just collapsing.
Oh man, that was one of the scariest things I'd ever seen watching WrestleMania.
It's up there.
Like I was like, this guy's done. This is it. I was 100% sure we would never see Brock Lesnar again.
And not only that, he goes on to defend it. He goes on to win the UFC Heavyweight Championship. He goes on to become the Universal Champion. So his career was not over by a long shot. He actually got better with time in some regard. I think in terms of accomplishments, not necessarily the in-ring performance, but he accomplished much more after that.
No, and he became, I think, arguably you're right. The in-ring stuff didn't really get that much better. And I think he became more of a marquee attraction after that.
He did. One final one for me that always stands out, one of my all-time favorite moments, Kurt Angle, Sensational Sherry cover Sexy Boy, their version, Sexy Kurt. I'm just a sexy Kurt. I'll make your ankle hurt.
That's amazing. That is fantastic. And I love that he did that when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Remember what Kurt Angle said? It's all about creating moments. And that's exactly what he did on that edition of SmackDown.
I don't want to go too off topic here, but man, I miss Sensational Sherry.
Me too.
There was the Iconics, not Peyton Royce, but Billy Kay.
Mm-hmm.
I think has an opportunity to maybe travel down that road.
Alexa too, to be honest, because she has that sassy personality. I mean, and she's pretty, legit in the ring. She might not be at that Charlotte or Becky level, but man, she's pretty legit too.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Alexa Bliss is. I know I've sang Becky Lynch's praises here, but Alexa Bliss is the top, in my opinion, female wrestler.
When you want to factor in everything, if we're talking the look, the marketability, confidence on the microphone, in-ring performance, I don't know if it gets any better than Alexa Bliss right now.
No, and two, when you to sort of just bring back the Kurt Angle and Sensational Sherry thing. I mean, that's easily a segment that could have just flopped.
Oh yeah,
because we've seen that from time to time now with some of the newer superstars. Just these I think it was the Bailey "This Is Your Life" segment. That
bombshell.
And so you're right though. For somebody like Alexa Bliss to have that confidence, no matter what is happening, the segment could be terrible, but to her, it's gold, and it translates.
It's that tunnel vision, right? And I think the best of the best have that they could still flop, but they'll go, you know what? Next week I redeem myself, and that's what separates the top of the heap and those who can never recover, and they beat themselves up over this forever.
Yeah. Even with Alexa Bliss too. I've noticed from time to time when things just aren't quite going, or at least it appears from a fan's perspective, this isn't going too good. She'll have that almost like a split second, like an epiphany or something, where she'll just turn it with whether it's just a word or something, so she is, in my opinion, one of the, if not the greatest, just right now.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things missing, and I hope, and by the way, I think you know this. I'm going down to the Performance Center. Did you know this?
I did not know this.
I'm actually going to see, so I'm going to be in Orlando next week. I'm going to the tapings of NXT leading up to War Games.
Dude, that's awesome.
I know. I can't wait. So the next episode of my show, similar to what NXT does, they always tease next week. I'm going to really dive into my entire live experience at Full Sail University.
Oh man, I am going to watch for you on camera.
Yeah, you'll see this really pale guy, and you'll go, "That's my good buddy, Chris Toplak."
Yeah.
There he is. But
There he is.
I was going to say, down at the Performance Center, I would so hope that you have those, and I mean, love them or hate them, you have guys like Hulk Hogan and Rock, and a lot of these individuals, I wish you could bring them in to say, I'm going to teach you how to feel the crowd, because those individuals can teach you better than anybody, and that's the one thing I believe is really lacking in this current crop of talent, is you got to really feed off what is happening in the crowd, pivot as appropriately as you can. I just don't see it as much as I did back, 20 years ago, where they took more chances.
Yeah, and I mean, like, speaking of Hulk Hogan, I mean, he had one of the sort of like the biggest gaffes in terms of speech, right? Like that was the whole Superdome, Silverdome thing, and look how that worked out. It worked out positively. I mean, mind you, it was probably helped on by Stone Cold and The Rock. But,
that was great,
right? But they he was able to, somehow they were able to spin that, and I think that, like you said, is crowd presence. And maybe in probably too confidence.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And perhaps maybe at a future WrestleMania, we'll have Austin, Rock, Cena, and Hogan in the ring at the same time, representing all the different eras. How about that?
You give me Stone Cold Steve Austin anytime, and I will enjoy what I'm watching.
Me too. He's the greatest of all time in the eyes of many. I would not argue that. If you look at like the full spectrum of the business, he should be right up there.
All the way back from his Stunning Steve days.
He was great.
He was great.
Yeah, that ECW promo to me was really the thing. When you go back, that solidified him as a top guy in my eyes. Just that confidence that he had in his voice. I believe he recorded it at the very end of the evening, like 3 a.m. And Raven stood by and said, how the hell are any of us going to top that? No one would.
Well, no, and the other thing too is he believed what he was saying.
Yep.
That was the other thing. There was like a level of truth to what he was saying. And that's eventually eventually that will happen for some of these stars that maybe it isn't happening for right now. They just need that one moment that they can just take and bottle it up and then just unleash it on the WWE universe.
That's true. I think an individual, and not to get too far ahead, and we'll wrap this up, might be Adam Cole to really hit that next level, because he is so confident on the microphone.
He reminds me of Shawn Michaels.
He reminds me of Shawn Michaels and CM Punk. He really does.
Yeah, and I got into this whole thing of I almost wondered if WWE heard me and they said, you know what, we're going to switch gears because we don't want people comparing the current superstars to superstars of the past. Because I was looking at Seth Rollins, he's my guy.
Yep.
And I was thinking, man, this guy is Shawn Michaels. How he broke up with the Shield, it was like Marty Jannetty-esque in terms of how violent it was and how shocking it was, and just his in-ring performance. He hasn't quite hit that on the mic yet.
No.
That level, but definitely one guy. The second I saw him, this is back in ROH. I think it was he had cut somebody's hair. I think it might have been Jay Lethal or something.
It may have been. That's back when he was Tyler Black.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about
Adam Cole. Yeah,
Adam Cole. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Adam Cole really started to hit his stride. Yeah, right back then. I actually remember right around that time. Yeah, he was just on another level of confidence.
Yeah, and he had that Shawn Michaels, just the way he looks at the camera and the pacing of his voice. Yeah. So I can't wait to see more of him.
Well, yeah, and I'll let you know what he's like in person when I go see him next Wednesday at the NXT taping. So we'll wrap up here. We could probably chat for hours on end, not only because we're diehard and devoted wrestling fans, but because we've always gotten along so well over the years, bonding over wrestling.
Yeah, it started on Twitter. So anybody that says social media is a terrible, terrible thing, there are positives to social media.
And yeah, after all these years, still pretty good buddies. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining me on the program today.
Dude, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And good luck in the future, and have fun in NXT. That's going to be awesome, man.
Will do.
I'm so jealous.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
I cannot wait for those tapings. Quick reminder, taking place this Sunday, October the 14th at 8 p.m. from the Melrose Ballroom in New York. It is Impact Wrestling's Bound for Glory. You can order it on Fight.tv. The retail price is $39.95, being headlined by Austin Aries, defending his championship against Johnny Impact, formerly known as John Morrison. Next week, it's going to be my live NXT experience, because next Wednesday I will be at the NXT tapings at Full Sail University. I'll let you know how it was, all the details, maybe spoilers, maybe not, but that's what you can expect next week on the program. Thanks to Chris Morrison for joining me and the band Trim for always contributing their music to the show. Check them out on SoundCloud. That's Trim, Trim, for all of their music. And most importantly, thank you for supporting this show. Until next Thursday, happy trails to you. Until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.